All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to Gaytriarchy for the 11th of May 2019. And we are fortunate enough to have I think our very first full-blown MGTOW that we have ever had on the show. And, the messed up thing is I already forgot the name that he wants to go by. Why don't you say it?
My name is Mephitus.
Methodist. Okay, kind of like Methodist
But with
church.
a F.
Uh, cool. So, yeah, and I was just thinking, I'm having one of those moods where I'm not particularly happy with women in my life, and it's not that I overall hate women, because I don't. And in fact, like, I have a friend that I just reconnected with who was a lesbian. This is actually good. You guys will love this. She was a lesbian for the dramatic majority of her life. Like, and I'm talking like the dykiest dyke of all time. And hopefully that doesn't count as some sort of demonetization, but it might. This girl, she looked like, we'd be outside of a bar and smoking, and it would be in the dark, and people would mistake her for a boy. She had a new girlfriend every 2 or 3 weeks, dating all sorts of crazy lesbians, and she'd just have a new one, and I'd be like, so what happened to that girl? She'd be like, which girl? Like that kind of a thing. And she was always really cool, but then it kind of got bad. Like, she had these repeated really, really crazy girlfriends. Like, one, after she broke up with her and was like, look, you're crazy, I can't talk to you anymore, the girl tried to file some restraining order on her and try to be like, she abused me, and so she couldn't go to any of the bars that she was ever at, which was a lot of them, and just all this crazy crap. And so then she eventually stopped dating women entirely. She's like, I think I need to actually just date men, because I can't deal with the lesbian girls in my neighborhood. And then I talked to her recently after like a really long period of not speaking, really, like for no reason. We just didn't contact each other. And she was never posting about politics online, and I had no idea. And I was a little bit afraid to talk to most of my old friends, because it turns out that most of my old friends, they can't contemplate the fact that I would stop being a leftist, and they think the fact that I think the Democrats are the worst thing in our nation. Like, there's nothing worse than the Democrats and their little progressives that they weaponize and things like that. So I assume that all my old friends are going to be freaked out by that and think I'm a Trump supporter, which, I mean, like, I do prefer Trump, but I'm not actually a Trump supporter. There's a number of things that actually bother me about him, and he's not the person I wished would be our president. I didn't vote for him. But I end up talking to her, and she's all like, politics are crazy. And then she kind of like gently says, like, I mean, I don't want to say I really like Trump, but I'm kind of glad he's our president. And I'm like, oh, I am too. And she's like, oh, thank God, I voted for him. And I was like, oh my God, so we had a whole talk, and she's like, yeah, no, dating women, I can't, and so it's like, okay, no, there's women that are cool, because I know this girl is cool, but there's women who are just not. I'm not talking about the women who have been on Gaytriarchy. They are all great. There's a reason why they came on. But people talk about those things that females say, and how it's like, you always know you're in for it when you meet a girl that says these certain things. Like, and they always bring up, I'm not like other girls, which is usually, I think, from what I understand from talking to straight men, a girl that says I'm not like other girls, what she really means is, I'm going to pretend to be whatever you want me to be until you start having sex with me, at which point I will turn into another girl. Like, just like all the other girls. It is just a trick to get you into bed. And the other thing that I was really thinking about, and there's a few others, maybe we can go through others, maybe we can brainstorm, like, what are those things that women say that are red flags? But the thing that women say that when men say this, well, they don't say this in the same way. When a woman tells you, I say what I mean, and I mean what I say,
No,
never trust a single word she says. Like, never. Like that. And they say it like that too, that I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. Like, isn't that a little redundant? Like, what? No, that's immediately self-defeating right there. when you talk to a man and he tries to convey his sincerity, you can trust that. And the guys who aren't like that aren't gonna like try to do that generally. They're not gonna pretend to be a man of their word when they're not. They're just gonna be a childish, cowardly man and just be obnoxious. But women will try to pull that crap when it's actually the reverse of what's true, like almost unanimously. Like a woman who does say what she means, she doesn't ever say that in my experience. And so, I've just been thinking about women and the annoying types of things that they say. And can you guys brainstorm a few things? Maybe that might be a good way to start out before we actually get into our guest and his deal while we're waiting for a few people.
Yeah, the behavior that you're talking about, we generally refer to as being a chameleon and mirroring. So they're trying to mirror back at you the behavior and speech patterns that you expect from that they think that you expect from them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, my ex wife did that for years before we got married, so I
Mm-hmm.
I got used to it quite extensively.
Was she can I ask how old you are?
I'm in my mid 30s, and I'm 35.
Okay, so we're about the same age, despite the fact that I sound like a 14-year-old drag queen. I'm actually, yeah, I'm a little bit older than you technically. Um,
I'm hardly one to talk. I sound like I smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, but I haven't had a cigar in years.
well, you have a great radio voice, by the way. Just
Thank you.
saying. So, yeah. Anyone else like thought about these things that are common traits of toxic femininity, the declarations of the things they aren't, posed as things that they supposedly are. Have any ideas?
Well, what you had described reminds me of there's a popular phrase which is words as magic spells, and that's kind of a common accusation, like I think particularly in MGTOW circles, but it really does apply to like a lot of people. Whereas this idea that people are using words just as like an incantation, and when you say, for example, I say what I mean when I mean what I say, that almost sounds like a way of just putting out a mystical incantation of like I'm not going to lie, but of course. You should show, don't tell, right? With that sort of a thing. And if someone's telling you that they're not going to be deceptive or not going to say something that's false, then it seems to be a cue that they're going to do the opposite. But words as magic spells kind of, it's always implying that there's not really truth behind it. And, when it comes to the chameleon aspect, that kind of has a nature to it where it's like they want something and they're, acting in a way so as to get it. But then I think that also I think what's really more common is when people use these tactics, they don't realize they're doing it, and that it's sort of like they don't understand like their own nature, and they're kind of just running on autopilot and then working with like a really short field of vision, and that's
They're
why you see these things happen over and over again.
Yeah, they're desperately attempting to avoid any and all personal accountability or agency or accountability for their agency.
Hmm. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. I was thinking about it when a guy talks about him being a man of his word. I think that the man usually is not gonna preface, like he's about to say something and he needs to clarify beforehand. By the way, I say what I mean and I mean what I say. It's more like he says something, someone says, "Why didn't you do that thing?" And then he's like, "I'm still working on it. I promise you, I'm a man of my word. Don't doubt that." And it's only when somebody starts to doubt it that he has to clarify something like that. Is from my experience, maybe not. I mean, there's a lot of crappy guys out there. Like, do not get me wrong, but does that make sense? That was certainly with me. Like the only time I ever talk about, like, yes, I really meant that, is when someone doubts me.
Men of weak character are men that do not own their shit, do not own their responsibility that they've taken on.
Mhm. Jordan, got anything?
Uh, well, there is a certain like hypnosis that's created by the languaging that they use, and the whole intention of it is to use emotional arguments and that are not reasonable or rational, and to create as much guilt and shame as possible because that's what weakens a person. It's what makes a person, it's what disarms a person. And then to make emotional attacks, which further disarms and makes that person vulnerable. And their ultimate goal is to either get that person to completely shut down or to get them to completely react, and then incriminate themselves by being like, look, see how enraged they are, like they're unstable or something like that. And then it's a gaslighting technique.
Oh, like the Kavanaugh treatment.
Exactly.
And it's like, huh, look, we made him mad by calling him a serial date rapist with like numerous allegations that we know are provably false. Like at least 2 of them fully admitted it. But it's his fault. He got mad. And it's like it's ridiculous Kafka trap BS. And yeah, what I think that you're saying is true. Oh god, I had something to expand upon. Wait, what did you say at first? The first part of that?
Oh, hypnotic language.
Hypnotic. Yeah. I'm drawing a
Or
blank.
in making emotional arguments.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was that. Okay. So they know that those things they're trying to accomplish somebody to get to feel bad about themselves and feel responsible for the interaction going wrong. And I think that men are particularly susceptible to that because on average, men, I think, are a little bit more likely to take accountability and responsibility for when things go south. And women, I think, I mean, I don't want to say women instinctively because I don't have any sort of biological ties to this. Sometimes when I talk about women, I can like directly talk about how it makes sense biologically that they would behave this way. I don't know if this is more of a cultural thing that our culture has sort of trained women that they can always get away with blaming the guys, and the guys have internalized that. And so it's just a cheap tactic to like control the conversation, control the men around them by, making the man feel like he's at fault because they know that works on guys.
I always find it hilarious when you turn that around on them and the sparks fly and they cannot process it. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's like the Jack Nicholson line from the Next Best Thing. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. How do you write a man? I'd take a man and I'd remove personal accountability and responsibility.
It was how do you write a woman? And he says, I think of a man and I take away reason and accountability. I've used that in a video. It's and it's like I really do feel like that stuff wouldn't be nearly so bad without feminism, because feminists just directly encourage that. Like when they say, men or women on university campuses shouldn't have to report their rapes to the police because it would re-traumatize them. That's exactly that. It's like, okay, so you don't have any reason. Like if you had reason in you, you'd want the guy to get in trouble with the police because that is the most important thing, if he really did something wrong. And then of course, like the accountability, it's like, well, this thing happened to you. And like, you can't just snap your fingers and expect the whole college to serve you, necessarily. So
but they will.
Yeah, but they will. Thanks, feminism. So yeah, if you're just getting new here, we have a few viewers. So please hit the like button. That'll help me out in the algorithm or help us out. This is a collaboration. And also make sure to think about what you could potentially donate to me because yes, my financial situation is extremely rough. The actual truth of the matter is that I am legally unable to access my savings until late July, which is it's a very, very long story. It has to do with my father dying, and that is all I'm going to say. So that's all. So
I guess
what's
I
up?
was just gonna weigh in on like the influence of feminism on female behavior because I think that it's a bit of a white pill. And this is something I'd be interested in hearing our guest weigh in on because there's a lot of talk within MGTOW about like female nature. And there's sort of this question of whether or not feminism, like to what degree it made female behavior worse. And then sort of this question of like, is there a way that that could be countered? Or is it just reflecting something that's like just immutable and like unchanging? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of wondering if a part of the problem is that women have never had like a sort of message directed at them saying, like holding a mirror up to their behavior and saying, this is what you're acting like, and this is what it looks like when you really undress it, and is this how you want to be?
Yeah, and then sorry.
Yeah, if you look at a lot of ancient scriptural texts, I used to be Mormon, so I studied a lot of different random things, but a lot of them all have very strong, shall I say, rules or regulations that would curb female behavior, or things that would otherwise adjust for the propensity for women to lie. In fact, even in, if I remember correctly, I just read a passage of the Quran where it talks about hypergamy, basically.
Hypergamy. Now, explain what you mean by that, because I forget what that is. I'm not a religious person.
Hypergamy is actually quite easy. So let's say that you have a sexual marketplace scale of a person from 1 to 10. Basically, a woman who's a 6 is almost always going to marry across. So she's going to marry another 6, or she's going to marry up. So she's going to marry a 7 or an 8. She's going to always try and be looking up. Mm-hmm. And especially in marriage, this can be easily shown. Like if you look at college-educated women, especially if they earn more than their male partners, the divorce rate goes from 50-60% to over 90%. You're basically guaranteed to get divorced if your wife is college educated and earns more than you.
Yeah, actually, I was talking to Brian from Honey Badger Radio, and he brought up Charlize Theron as an example of that. Like, she can't keep a boyfriend, even though she's, one of the hottest girls on earth. And it's like, he was using her as an example of this like weird female mentality of never being satisfied, even though she sort of already has everything. But I think that she's also crazy. Like, have you seen pictures of her with her kid?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's nuts. But in accordance with hypergamy, there's actually a comic that's going around where it's Lois Lane coming out of bed basically naked next to Superman. She's going, "Is he really the best I can get?"
Yeah.
And then I think in a broader sense, that's where you have like Briffault's law.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that it's pretty fascinating once I had encountered that as like a formal like concept. I thought, like, wow.
What's that?
So I have like the actual quote up here. It says, "The female, not the male, determines all the conditions of the animal family. Where the female can derive no benefit from association with the male, no such association takes place."
Okay. Huh.
It's one of those things that's like, it's kind of like everybody knows it, but then nobody puts it into words. And then once it's put into words, it's like this really kind of like profound thing. Like yes, the sun is the center of the solar system.
That's because it's seen as a criticism against women, and any and all criticism of women is seen as heretical because we're such a gynocentric society.
Absolutely. Yeah, what's weird is that, okay, so I'm one of the types of gay guys where I was raised by man-hating women. My mother and my sisters all hated men relentlessly, and they hated my father really, really bad, even though he wasn't a bad dude. Some really, really bad stuff happened when I was divorced. There was a custody battle, and I hated him. But like ultimately, he had integrity and he was smart, and he, as I grew older, he instilled good values onto me, and defended me at the right times, showing that he really cared about me in a way that none of my other family members truly did. Those times when it really counts and you need someone, like, he was there. So I always had this sense of, from being around man-hating women and sounding really, really gay and getting picked on a lot in middle school, I ended up having a primarily female and gay male friend group in high school. But then I made more and more friends with straight guys in my junior and senior year, especially, and in particular, a bunch of guys that were college students that were at the university. Because we knew each other from raves and stuff. And what I really noticed, but I never really put this into words at the time because I didn't have any sort of vocabulary to think about, actual legitimate gender stuff. Like, I only heard the feminist side of things, and pretty much and everybody only did, because this was Seattle. But when I started hanging out with the straight guys that they had apartments, and there'd be like, 4 dudes living in one apartment, and they'd have turntables and a TV with video games. They were so open to being friends with any guy who would come around and be cool and be nice with people. Like, he wouldn't have to be very interesting. Like, a lot of the guys were really boring, but they were one of our friends, and that was like a no questioned, not a question thing. And there was that loyalty, and they didn't think about like, oh, why do we even like Dan? It was just like, because he's nice and he is around and he plays video games with us. What else do you need? You know what I mean? And there's something so sweet about that with guys, if you really think about it, the way that guys are willing to do that, and nobody ever gives them credit for that type of compassion and humanity.
I noticed that I was on a men's retreat once, a meditation retreat, and it was not a silent meditation type thing. It was just like, whatever, but we enjoyed being in space together, doing things and not having to talk to one another. And it was like amazing to me.
Yeah, it actually kind of reminds me of there was this woman, she was a lesbian woman. I forget what the name of the article was, or she wrote a book about it. But she actually spent a year as a man, just to kind of understand men and see what was going on with everything. And she actually lamented that women could not have that kind of camaraderie that men do in such an easy fashion. She was like, yeah, I went in and joined a bowling group, and all these guys were just like, yeah, come on in, join us. It's all good, don't be a dick, and we're all good.
Yeah. That's one of the things I notice. I play a lot of video games, like all the time, every day, and I always play the team games where you can talk to people and you have a team. Like Apex Legends and Overwatch are my favorite at the moment. And the way that like, if a guy can play the game, he's cooperative. He doesn't freak out on his teammate if his teammate makes a mistake or just happens to get himself killed or something like that. Then we're like, oh, hey, want to group up? Okay, cool. And then we start waiting for matches. We talk a little bit, and that's all there is to it. Like, nobody's ever judgmental. Nobody's ever racist. Nobody's ever homophobic. And if a guy starts getting like that, everyone's like, oh, what is with this guy? And you don't play with them, and that's really all there is to it. There's no hazing process. It's just like, is this guy cool?
Yeah. So. I was at a party last weekend, and it was like a bus with a sound system, like in a park kind of thing. And where I have a boyfriend now, and but this was just a guy girl party, not like anything, not like a gay thing or whatever. But I'm there with my friends and stuff, and my boyfriend and I get onto the bus and we go find an area to sit by the window. And like immediately as we sit down, and it was right next to a stripper pole, and the girls are there and the guys are there and they're all having fun. We just want to be next to the window. And immediately as we sit down, I feel like one guy out loud like express like that he had a problem with us being there, right? And I was just like, oh, fuck this. I don't even want to deal with this. Like, so I just ignored him and I just sat down. I was like, I'm not even going to acknowledge this. Mm-hmm. But the beautiful thing was that I didn't have to, because within minutes, I'm looking out the window and suddenly I see that guy getting kicked off the bus. And he goes all the way out, looks all despondent, tries to come back, get on the bus, and is told to leave again. And like the people running that bus were like not having it, like not for 1 second. It was a beautiful sense of camaraderie.
It's what's funny when I play video games and somebody starts being dicks to some of my friends, like I play with this one kid who's like an 18-year-old gay guy who's very not used to getting into arguments with straight guys. Like, I think that he never really stood up for himself probably in high school. And then I have a few racial minorities as friends and people, I mean, they don't sound like they're really racial minorities, but like I've been in games where people were full on calling people porch monkeys and the N-word and stuff, and it's funny because, you know, I sound all gay and everything, but I am by far the most likely person to just check that guy and just to, you know, embarrass the crap out of him and just be like, yeah, you know, no, you can't talk to people like that, blah, 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 blah. You know, I'll live stream all the time, and I've gotten into arguments. I'm good at thinking on my feet. And so I do that because a lot of the time I feel like people, you know, need somebody to sort of step up and, geez, I don't know what I'm getting at here, but there's this.
It's a hierarchical challenge that basically that you referred to is understanding where you are in the totem pole, and that's why, like, let's say you get in a fist fight with a dude. When the fist fight is over, the hierarchical challenge has been met. You know where you stand on the totem pole, and it's done with. You're cool. I've even had friends that I've been really good friends with after I've gotten in a fist fight with them because, hey, we had a challenge, we met it, and it was good.
Yeah, I guess with my situations with, God, I talk so much about video games on here, but I guess one of the things is that I am with the people that I play with, and this usually revolves around Overwatch because it's a particularly team oriented game in which you have to build teams, but I tend to be the person who's most likely to say which characters we need, like, hey, we need another tank, we need another healer, that kind of a thing, and I take charge in that kind of way. And once people realize that I'm gonna do that, they follow suit because there's not, like, usually someone needs to do that, and then they appreciate it. And I'm also one of the better players, you know, I get lots of kills and stuff, and so I guess it sort of becomes expected of me. You know, if like there's some guy who's like trying to, if there's a group of 4 of us and then some guy we don't know ends up on our team and he's just this total jerk, like they're kind of like, Prince, say something, you know what I mean? So I do it, you know, it's like it's my responsibility. So
what it reminds me of is in like local game stores where you have like trading cards, right? Like to me, that's there's kind of a similar like social aspect, but it's more of like a one-on-one kind of, doesn't have that team aspect necessarily. But it reminds me of when there's kind of this feminist trope about when gamer girls try to step into like a nerd culture, they get tested, right? And like when I learned about that concept, I thought, like, that's like, this is so typical of how you would interact with someone. Like you'd ask them about like, oh, what are you interested in? Like, what do you like about it? Like, do you know about this thing or that thing? And it's because like, particularly if you're in this like nerdy community, and really kind of men in general, that we use interest and use like third points, like third objects, right, as kind of a mediator to understand things. And you have this whole feminist narrative that says that, you know, when you go into like this card trading store or whatever and play these games, like, oh, well, they're trying to test you. They're trying to test you, right? It's this big thing. And I think that's why you have this stereotype of like, you know, the autistic lesbian who kind of can actually hang out with the guys, right? And it's sort of like she has like that male brain where she doesn't like think that way. And
well, it's like, I'm just thinking we test each other. That's what we kind of do. You know?
It's because we make sure that the other party isn't a weak link in the group, so to be a threat or a potential problem.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's true if you're talking about like a team-oriented thing. But then I think on a more casual level, like you kind of just want to figure out like what you can talk about, or what you can bring up, and like whether or not they're kind of in the know, right? Because they have to explain it in a different way.
Yeah. Melissa, who Spacepan certainly knows. I'm not sure if Jordan's ever talked to her. She's actually she's a trans person that has been on, you know, male to female, who's been on Gaytriarchy once, maybe twice, but I've streamed with her a lot, and she's very interesting character. She's extremely far right. She considers herself a libertarian nationalist, and she can explain exactly what she means for about an hour. And she's very blue collar. She was in the Navy for 10 years. She grew up, you know, actually her father raised her. And the thing about her is she can't stand, you know, most trans people. She can't stand the LGBT community. She doesn't want her transition paid for. You know, she wants to get surgeries that she can't afford. So she's going to be a truck driver. And the person who was first training her, you know, like giving her the introduction to the school, I interviewed her about this, and she said, look, so the person who was interviewing her is a woman, but she's like a real blue collar woman who's been, she's probably over 50, been doing trucking for probably 20 years or something. And she was like, to be honest, you're going to get crap. Yeah. I mean, you're a trans girl. Look, every woman, every trans girl, they give you a little bit of crap until they see that you can do the job. And then once you prove that you can do the job, nobody's going to say a goddamn thing. And I really feel that attitude is like, that's sort of what I mean, at least you always know where you stand. Like if you can accept the fact that there is a little bit of a period of, like I don't like the word hazing because that's a little bit too severe. Just more of like, like, okay, this is a thing, and now we're not necessarily used to people being able to do it, so you got to sort of prove it to you, okay, to us that you can do this, and okay, so.
I think it is somehow like what Mephitus was pointing to is the way that men test for weakness in other men for the collective good, like wanting the collective strength,
Yeah.
Yeah, a man that is in need is going to bring the whole group down. He's going to be the weak link that we have to watch out for.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's not necessarily being a vindictive thing. It's a, hey, we have to worry about this because it's kind of like, you ever see the movie 300?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of like Ephiartes. He's a cool guy. He means well, but he cannot protect the man to his left, and that's their entire point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it comes down to it. Like if at some point Melissa is not able to do the job, then one of those men is going to have that talk with her and be like, look, this just is not for you. You need to go do something else.
Yeah. So, we've just been talking a whole bunch about male competitiveness, group camaraderie, and everything, but I think we should sort of shift gears a little bit and talk about our guest. You identify as a MGTOW. You also have a son. Those are basically the only things I know about you. So can you talk a little bit about your history and how you found yourself in the current phase of your life and why you speak about such things? By the way, do you have a channel?
I do, but I haven't made any content yet. I'm still struggling with what to make my first episode on, honestly.
Well, we
I'm
could maybe help you brainstorm. I mean, you really do have a great radio voice. So, yeah.
Thanks. The first thing that I'm looking at doing is declining marriage and purchasing patterns between different businesses, such as affecting like David's Bridal. Looks like it's about to go into bankruptcy. Jewelry is drastically changing its pattern of purchasing. Sorry, my son's showing me his old maid set. Oh, you got
Oh, it's sweet. Your son sounds like very sweet.
Yeah, he's my little buddy. And a couple other things. Let's see, what was the other ones I was looking at?
So you're
Oh, yeah.
saying that there's a change in the bridal industry?
Yeah, like David's Bridal, they look like they are about to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They filed for Chapter 13 last year or the year before, last year, I believe. And with the decline of marriage rates across the United States, in fact, all of Western society, it's dropping like a stone. A lot of these different businesses that are predicated on marriage, they're dying. They're dying like crazy. If you look at a lot of the jewelry industry, the way that they're advertising, their methodology that they've been going is much more of, hey, women, you can buy it for yourself, not, hey, guys, buy it for your significant other.
Mm.
It's a lot more noticeable if you look out for it.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like my personal history as to where I got to where I am, well, let's see. Probably the shortest way of doing it is that I was with a woman for 5-6 years, married for 5, and then I found out basically that she had been cheating on me. I found out because I'll own up to it. We'd basically been in a sexless marriage, and I had started to get tempted to be cheating. And I was like, all right, I'm going to own up. I'm getting tempted to be cheating. This is a really big problem. We got to deal with this. And I started seeing the same patterns of behavior from her when I realized what I was doing. And I started looking into history and found some evidence. When I confronted her with it, she actually accused me of sexual assault. I got really lucky, and then it got thrown out. but a lot of that kind of self-healing and looking into figuring things out led me to MGTOW, and I've been MGTOW basically for 2 years now.
That's interesting. I had a funny my experience of like finding out how just horrible women can be in relationships. You know, I wasn't actually having sex with this woman, but we had a very, very kind of bizarre friendship when I was in my early 20s. I I convinced myself that I was going to marry a lesbian and have kids, and that we would be this like neo family, and it would be this like cool thing. Very like early 20s, gay guy who thinks he can is a little idealistic and thinks he can reshape the world. And I attracted this one woman who was very bisexual. She certainly loved having sex with women, and she decided that she wanted to be my lesbian that I kind of talked about. And so we started living with each other. We lived together for about a year and a half. And eventually I decided I didn't want to live with her anymore for various reasons. Like, it just wasn't working. And she did want to have sex with me. There was some times that happened, and it was like, oh, this is not what I signed up for, you know? And
all women are bi. It's just your job
Yeah.
to figure out if they're polar or bi, or polar or sexual.
Yeah. So my the breaking point was I ended up I didn't tell her that I didn't want to live with her when I should have, because it was right by my work, like the apartment. It was about like a 10-minute walk from my work, and she was technically the leaseholder, so I, you know, probably would have had to move out. So I was like we had this really big fight. I didn't tell her. And then about 4 or 5 months later, when we were cool, and like, you know, I think it was like actually on the morning after my birthday, like we were still awake, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to live with you. I haven't wanted to live with you for quite a while, but you know, it's cool that we're cool right now. She was not happy. She was like, but she acted like, not, you know, it wasn't a big deal. She's like, oh, okay, yeah. And then
My paycheck's going away. No.
Well, no, I didn't pay for anything from her. You know, I was like 23. You know, like it was she made more money than I did. Like this was in Seattle, and so but she really. I don't want to get into how like her reasons for wanting to be with me, but they're like weird and creepy, I think. So what happened was she had a girlfriend at this time, and the girlfriend had a house, and so she started moving out in secret. The first thing she did is she stole our cat, and without telling me, she didn't even leave a note. And the thing is, it was our cat. Like, that was the thing about the cat. It was supposed to be equally ours. And she started moving stuff over just in secret, didn't even tell me anything about it. And I was trying to talk to her, like I was sending her messages. I'm like, dude, I don't care that you're moving out. Well, because she kept saying these things, like she was like, you know, I'm not doing this to hurt you. And I'm like, look, I don't care. I told you I don't want to live with you. And I was like, I just want to talk about it because we share stuff together. You know, like we have a comic book collection that each of us bought about half the comics. We got to figure this out, you know? And she just started moving stuff out. And it became very clear that she was actually trying to provoke me when I came home and there was 2 bookshelves in front of my door to my room, like Temple of Doom style, you know? And it was like, okay, she's just trying to piss me off. But I was stupid. I took the bait. I left a message where I was yelling at her on her phone, and I didn't say I was going to hurt her or anything. You know, I just wouldn't do that as a person. But she tried to play the victim card in that way and say that she was scared of me and stuff. And she did it to like 8 or 9 people that we knew in common. Fortunately, all of them were like, I don't believe that. I think something's going on, because she had done so many things like that in the past. Like, she was always a shady, manipulative person, and that got caught lying about numerous things, and nobody ever had any reason to doubt my you know, just good behavior in general, and my integrity, because I'm just like incapable of lying. But it was from that point onward where I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. I understand these like horrible breakups that happen, and people end up blaming the guy, and then the guy it seems like he's going crazy and he's so angry about it, and he insists that he didn't do anything. You know what? I think most of those guys probably, they're just really mad because they're telling the truth and people don't believe them, you know? And so that was my little thing like that.
Oh yeah.
And stealing the cat is really fucked.
She sounds like she was on the narcissistic spectrum.
Oh, she is. She's very, very narcissistic. So.
Well, it reminds me of when you have people who are going through divorce and they'll be seeking out advice from people within like a red pill circle. And then they're given the information and they're kind of like, that can't possibly be my only option. Like this can't possibly be, you know, all I have to work with. And it's really tragic that usually that's kind of the only answer is you're like, yeah, like most of the things that you can do are things that you would have had to have done at a certain point in time. And a lot of people are looking for help once a lot of it's already too late, and they have to just kind of basically try to not get fucked as hard. try. I don't know.
It's MGTOW grows and sex dolls sell.
Yeah, absolutely. I really am white pilled on love dolls. I think that love dolls are going to really change the world for the better. Like they're the superhero that we need. I think I'd like to write like some short fiction about a superhero that's just like a love doll. And then that's the joke is like the love doll doesn't actually do anything, just like the entire plot happens around it, but the love doll ends up saving the day. The truly feminist hero, right, where she like has no agency at all. I think a lot of women would be able to relate to such a strong, powerful character.
Did anyone watch the Green Lantern animated cartoon? It was like a 3D kind of like Pixar style thing that came out probably like 5-6 years ago.
Gross. No,
it was cool.
Not.
Well, never mind. Anyhow, I'm gonna stop speaking so much for a while and grab some water and stuff. Could you guys? I've been speaking so much anyway.
Yeah,
you guys take it out. Take it away.
Yeah, speaking of sex dolls, if you go on my if you follow me on Twitter, you'll be seeing that I've been posting a lot of sex doll stuff today, just because of who was it? Allison, the sex strike. You guys seen that?
No, I haven't.
Oh god, it's hilarious. There's a bunch of far lefties that are saying like, "Hey, we need to boycott all sex with men until they fix these abortion laws."
Oh, I did see that. Yeah, on June's post about it.
Oh, never mind. That's something way different.
Let me find where I posted about that.
Yeah, no, it's some sort of sex strike. Yeah, Alyssa Milano. Yeah, you tell everyone about this. I'll be away from the computer, but I did hear about this.
All right, so Alyssa Milano is calling for everybody to go into a sex strike because of the battle on women's bodies. You know, it's all bullshit. It's just hey, I want to kill babies and I want you to pay for it.
I know they always accuse pro-life people of like using loaded language when they say you're saying we're killing babies, and it's like, dude, you literally repackaged opposition to your movement as rape. Like,
yep, pretty much. And so I've just been posting a bunch of stuff on my Twitter, which you'll find under Mephitus on Mephitus LePew, or Mephitus Skunk actually. But I've just been posting. Well, we'll just replace you with the doll. Thanks, bye.
And that's the really like it's funny but also very sad that that's kind of what it's come to, is you have all these men saying, you know, you as a living breathing human right now, you don't like compare favorably to a hunk of plastic.
Pretty much. It's kind of sad that you think that the only bargaining chip that you have, or the best bargaining chip that you have, is a warm hole between your legs that can be easily be replaced by a big lump of TPE.
Oh, I'm already following you. I must have found you somewhere before.
Oh, okay. In fact, yeah, if you want to have him on, Phil with the Dollhouse would probably join you guys on a podcast sometime too.
Oh, he's really cool. He would actually be a really fascinating guest. We could talk about male sex dolls. I think that's been unexplored.
yeah. Because most of the male sex dolls that I've seen sell have been primarily for women, which admittedly is kind of a niche market, because what women want from sex and a relationship tends to be a little bit more than merely just big rod, so to speak.
Well, I always joke that we've had male love dolls or like sex robots for a really long time. It's the ATM machines. You know, the ATM machine is the OG male sex robot, right?
Women don't want a boyfriend. They want an ATM machine. They want a chocolate dick that ejaculates money.
Yeah, and that's the thing too is I was actually speaking with a girl who's you know, she's much more like feminist leaning, and I mentioned I don't know, like I just mentioned love dolls like a lot, just like I think they're really cool because I am really excited about them. Like I don't personally need one because like I don't think gay men really there's not as much of like this need the way there is for, you know, what straight men have to go through. But like just the concept of it like socially and the implications of it I think are really exciting and I think are going to be really good and healthy for society. So I think I mentioned kind of in that vein, and then she mentioned, no, it normalizes necrophilia, and like I thought,
it normalizes necrophilia and pedophilia and rape culture.
yeah, and isn't that remarkable that you know, because the way I keep kind of a pulse on MGTOW is I just listen to TFM a lot. And I think that like, you know, I keep a pulse on things just with him. But you know, he'll predict it. He'll say like, yeah, they're going to you know, pump this narrative that says that it's there to normalize pedophilia. And lo and behold, like you see article after article of that. And I remember one that really sticks out was oh, it was the guy who got like a cheaper sex doll from China, and it had like adult proportions, but it was just like smaller.
Mm-hmm.
But right, and basically he gets like stopped at an airport and they're like confiscating it and going through it and like detaining him over it and like really shaming him over it. And then there's this whole article about how like, you know, they you know, considered charging him, you know, over that. And then, you know, eventually they all dropped it. But just like imagining that sort of thing happening to you is pretty.
Yeah,
I don't think a lot of people realize, you know, the negative externality of like this. It's really overzealous, I think.
Yeah, Phil with the dollhouse actually just went through a similar situation himself. He was selling a lot of dolls that were on the. I'm not going to say that they were really short. Like the shortest of them, I think, was like 5'1", 5'2", something like that. So they're small-ish, but not like proportioned to be a child. But he had a bunch of his computers and stuff confiscated by the police while they were investigating him for potential child porn and different things like that. Of course, they found absolutely nothing, but then refused to give back his equipment for months at a time. And he's been working ever since to move here to the States. I believe that he just opened a location in San Antonio, so that should help out a lot.
Where is he moving from?
The UK.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he needs to get out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he needs to get the hell out of there.
Yeah, and like
central.
there's a kind of it's really a lot of the same arguments people make against porn, which is really interesting. Like people turn into these like ultra Puritans as soon as it's like something new, but we all kind of accept that, you know, the availability of porn overall it seems to have been like a net benefit. There's some kind of ugly aspects of it, but as a whole it seems like it's really kind of been a benefit giving people access to porn. It's given them kind of an outlet, and that it's kind of like released some of the pressure on things. And I think that was a similar argument, yeah, for love dolls. I don't know, this is kind of spicy, but when they say, you know, like they shouldn't like I honestly think that if you have people who like are into children, I say, you know, why not give them like a doll? I feel like it kind of gives them like a way to remove themselves and to, you know, to at least in a victimless way, you know.
Yeah, every study that's been done on the subject has actually found that the more availability of pornography that you have, the lower your sex crime rate goes. So
Okay,
like Japan, it's really, really, really low.
So I just want to say, you know, you guys, this is a very complicated topic and it is worth discussing, but at the risk of my channel and my reputation, anything regarding pedophilia, I just don't talk about because as a gay guy, people get dramatically smeared and things get blown out of proportion to a ridiculous degree. So we got to not talk about the kitty diddling stuff in any way, shape, or form, including dolls, just because of that. And you know, I am attracted to men, hairy men, and that is the deal. So I would like to change the subject, but we can certainly talk about robotic adult sex dolls for the record. And for the record, one of the things that I wanted to say about this is actually a really funny thing. So my mother, who I definitely have issues with, certainly at the moment, but she, to her credit, she's actually very open to men's rights advocacy for a lot of reasons, mainly because she had a lot of experience teaching math to middle school and high school students, and in particular, kind of like at-risk students. And it was the black males in particular who she noticed were really having problems, and it was not the black females, and she made that very clear as part of it. She's done like activism work, and so it was easy for me when I started being a men's rights advocate to really get through to her. And then eventually she got into Jordan Peterson. She's obsessed with Jordan Peterson. She's read both of his books, and really she says he's her hero and stuff like that. So
Make
she
sure to wash your penis.
Wash your penis.
so she ended up going to some naturopath type doctor. I'm not really sure who, maybe an acupuncturist or something, because she's into natural medicine. And he told her that he had a client who was a MGTOW who planned to marry a sex robot. And she was like, oh yeah, actually, no, I know all about this, like blah, 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 blah. It's this movement of guys. And yeah, I mean, actually, I really understand where they're coming from. And apparently the guy was horrified, this like woman in her, 70s that seems like such a lefty, because she is a lefty and she was a feminist most of her life. And I think probably still self-identifies as a feminist in sort of the Christina Hoff Sommers type way. But she knew all about this, and the guy had no concept that would happen. Like, I think he was wanting to like make fun of the dude or whatever, be the typical male feminist about it probably. And she's like, no, that's actually really understandable.
A man isn't seeking female validation? You don't say.
So when did you find out about MGTOW? Like you kind of just sort of said the basic trajectory, but I want you to know, like, when did it start to click that these things were worth really embracing and trying to form community around and speak about in a way that would empower other guys to make decisions that would better their lives in the way that you feel is most helpful?
Well, coming out of the relationship and marriage, I was in a place where I was realizing that I was needing to fix a lot of things, work on myself. And like, I was being codependent on it. I was trying to, I needed her to need me. And so I was trying to fix that of like, well, why do I need her to need me? And I started trying to search out some therapists. I actually walked out on two because I realized that they were basically feminists. One of them openly said, yeah, I'm a feminist. The other one said, yeah, I do ascribe to patriarchy theory, in short. So I just walked out. So I started looking on different sources online, and I found a couple different people like, I forget her name. She wrote a book with Paul Elam, Say Goodbye to Crazy, about...
that's Dr. Tara Palmatier.
Yes.
Dr. T. She's great.
Yeah, I do highly recommend her channel if you are interested at all. And I found her.
Yeah, she just recently started making videos again, I think like late last year.
Yeah,
I'll check them out.
Make any videos.
Yeah, and I found her. I found Paul Elam, and I found a couple other people like Tom Golden. And a lot of their content was basically a kick in the ass that I really needed. Of basically being like, no, look, take ownership of your shit. And it led to MGTOW, basically. I was just like, oh, I'm going to start owning all this and start questioning, why is it that I'm wanting to get in a relationship even to begin with again? Is it just me that's crazy looking at all of these women? Like, I was starting to get back to the dating scene after about 6 months of being separated. And I'm going through all these women going, wow, these women are just frankly disgusting. Am I like being weird, or, is it really that so many of these women are just not even worthy of taking out for coffee? And
when did you start? Like, what was the year that you started trying to date again?
What would that would have been 2017, early 2017.
Okay. Yeah, so that was when fourth wave feminism had totally come back and reshaped the social landscape of how single women behave entirely. Like
Yeah.
one of the things I've always been very adamant about on my channel, like it's actually one of the first things that I discussed, was that I really think that it's important to think very specifically about fourth wave feminism and how it differentiates from third wave feminism, because so many people think that we're still in the third wave of feminism, which isn't really true. I mean, technically the theory hasn't changed a whole bunch, but fourth wave feminism is what happened when all the crazy gender studies people kind of realized well, I think the thing is, I was a kid in the 90s and in the early 2000s, and it was pretty much confined to, like little activist circles and certain music event type things that were, often very queer, but it was very, female centric, feminist focused type stuff. And yeah, university stuff. And people didn't take them seriously. People were like, they're unpleasant. We don't like them. And they didn't have any ability to get through to most people because they were confined to these specific settings. And when a famous woman would call herself a feminist, like Madonna called herself a feminist, but she wasn't a feminist. Like it's like, no, Madonna, you're something else. And even Tori Amos is not really a feminist if you actually talk, like hear her speak and read her interviews and stuff.
Well, it's always been cancer, even since the suffragette movement. It's been
Yeah.
always been a supremacy movement, not a one of equality.
Yeah, very much agreed. I've I have a number of videos that are kind of historical. If the one video I always recommend to people of mine, if they want to get my full kind of opinion of current feminism, is I have a video called Intersectional Feminism as Communist Particle Board that goes through the history. But I haven't done enough work on just how feminism as a very concept, starting with the original definition, which was a society should be judged by how well it treats its women, which is the true definition. It has never changed from that. It's basically a backhanded way of saying men don't matter. And that's all feminism has ever been. But
I have to recommend a book by Bob Lewis called The Feminist Lie. It was never about equality.
yeah, actually, I've read the book and I chatted with him a teeny bit on Minds, and he said he wanted to talk to me, so he might come on the show. We might talk in some other capacity. So yeah, absolutely. I know that book, and yeah, it's definitely worth a read. So, the thing about the fourth waivers, though, is that they are the social media feminists. They claim it started around 2008, and it was certainly going on, but it really kicked into high gear in 2012. That's the year that Jezebel, Everyday Feminism, those were kind of like the titans of everyday of fourth wave feminism, and all that stuff. It spoke to women's most childish desires of blaming men for everything. Like every insecurity a woman has, these blogs said, it's not your fault, it's the men. And it's like, you can behave as awful as you want and you deserve it because patriarchy and blah blah, misandry isn't a thing and men are awful. I mean, I don't actually hate men, but I really do. And even the men I like, they all have the potential to be evil, and just everyone should always remember that. And that stuff got really shared on social media. And then there was always the fleet of women on social media that were adamant about this stuff, forming the Twitter mobs, trying to get people fired. And then they became powerful for the first time ever, because they had social media to bully people. And then it actively became a political tool for the Democratic Party. And, in Europe.
No, they had power before that. I mean, if you look at the temperance movement, that was a feminist movement.
Sorry. Yeah. They definitely pushed their stuff into law, and they were able to, remain politically. Sorry, I guess I stated myself poorly, but they didn't have all that influence in terms of the broad culture as a whole. But then with the internet, they did, because they could ruin any man at any time. And then that also that power of the internet began being mobilized in conjunction with the political feminist establishment to a point where they became really, really powerful in a way that they had never experienced, that nobody's ever experienced before. And unless women actively were thinking to, unless they were like Karen Strawn looking at this being like, whoa, this is messed up, I need to say something about it, they just, even if they didn't think they were feminists, even if they didn't like feminists, they were still affected by that, that sort of unconditional female privilege that they all ended up receiving from the fact that men were just terrified. Like every straight guy especially was walking on eggshells around them, and they abused that, and it shaped the way that almost every woman acts. And that's why I think that fourth wave feminism is so specifically worth talking about.
Yep. If you speak out against the gynocentric privilege of women, or just female or attempt to hold women accountable for their own agency, it is modern heresy.
Yeah, and I have like an outgoing, like an open challenge to any feminist, if they can actually, justify their movement and explain how people in the manosphere have just gotten it so wrong, apparently. I'm like, okay, I'll go clean up the mess that I contributed to in some way. I know who they all are. Like, I can figure out, like, I know how to address them all, like,
Yeah.
but I've never seen them do that. Instead, what I see are just people who, the things that they post make me feel like they just stepped out of a time capsule, and it's bizarre to me. And I really find, like, I can't relate to it at all. Like when people like see the Blasey Ford drama with Kavanaugh, and then are posting things about, like, of course their testimony isn't going to be consistent because this is your memory and blah blah blah, like as if these are new arguments. Or when they make arguments about like rape culture, or the one poisoned M&M and all this like super old shit. It's to me it's really bizarre, and like I still have trouble grasping the fact that people are just that, I don't know, like at this point it's not just ignorance, like you'd have to be stupid.
Yeah.
Well, and I think they another thing is that they became really, really attached to the fact that they didn't have to make sense to get their way anymore, because of the fourth wave bullying mobs.
And they don't have to define a winning condition or exit strategy for it. So they can't say, hey, once we accomplish this, then we're going to be completed and we can disband. We're no longer needed. Like if you look at, say, intactivists, the people who are trying to attempt to remove circumcision for being a lawful practice, either for men or women, they can go, hey, once we can get this made an illegal practice, we're done. We're complete. We can disband. We are no longer necessary.
Well, and that's
the
one of the
feminists, they
things is,
cannot define that.
yeah, I had made a video for Prince. I guess it's been a couple of years now, but it was one where I said, if feminists wanted to quash the men's rights movement, all they'd have to do is just pick up one of these issues and then solve it. Because like feminists could snap.
Men issues, male.
What did I say?
You said that they would have to pick one of these issues and solve
Right.
it. But what you mean is because the argument in your video. I'm going to clarify your video that you made, because what it was about was how feminists claim to want equality. That's their underlying their bait and switch marketing tactic of how they advertise themselves, except for they've literally done, there's no actual meaningful legitimate example of women doing anything, feminists doing anything to help men. It's never actually happened. But if they did it even once, they would be able to at least fall back on that one thing they really did for men forever, and they would probably be able to get away with it. And it's kind of rather amazing that they can't bring themselves to do even that.
Yeah, and I've seen them try to like link me a list of like, these are things we did for men, and it's a pathetic list. It's really, especially if you compare it to what they've done for women, and like
It's always things that allow men to better support women.
Yeah, usually it does come down to that. Or it's things that like benefit men on accident, right? It's never like they actively go out and do something that just helps men, you know? It's like we did this thing and here's how we can rationalize how this also helps men. And of course, typically whatever change it is, by and large, it actually hurt men. It's just they found a few men who maybe got some benefit from it.
I think it's funny how, so I remember the 90s very well, and I remember how everybody was wearing red ribbons around, at least in leftist type cities. It was this very pop cultural thing to have the AIDS ribbon, to care a bunch about AIDS. And then soon after that, the lesbians, I guess, because, they want to make it clear that they hate men and that women are more important, they started the pink ribbons for breast cancer. And it's like, okay, but breast cancer just sort of happens. It's not this extremely contagious disease that could affect potentially everybody and does affect every type of person. The only thing about breast cancer that's specific is that it almost exclusively affects women. And so what you're doing here is just, it's like, okay, how can we piggyback off of this already existing movement and make it purely about women entirely, as if, it's like, well, why do you have to do that? And I can totally imagine them say, being like, oh, we raised all this money and now we know much more about breast cancer, and sometimes it affects men too, so we did help men.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of the exact like straw they grasp at. And like it was funny because I remember when I'd first like learned about feminism, kind of like in high school and college, just kind of like jumping around some Wikipedia pages, and I thought like, wow, there's all different kinds of it. This is very complicated, and it seems like people have a lot of really interesting thoughts. And I'd always kind of given them the benefit of the doubt, and I just kind of thought like, okay, if that's the thing you want to focus on, I'm sure there's something there. I'm sure that you're doing your good and you're focusing where you want to focus. And then when I had first discovered men's issues in the men's movement, I thought like, wow, this is really fascinating. I bet that the feminists will find this really interesting because this is what they're all about. Right? Yeah. How naive, right? Oh, wow. Oh, Karen Strawn, she's a notorious woman hater. Blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh, she just seemed like she likes to wear comfortable shoes and sit in the kitchen. I don't know. Like, it didn't really seem that threatening to me. And then, so there's kind of this step where like, it was very different from when I discovered MGTOW. Because discovering the men's movement, it was just so a little bit bewildering because it made so much sense. And then the feminist response to it really kind of convinces you that like, wow, like they really just got caught with their pants down. Their entire narrative is based on a comparison between the male and female experience where they never even considered the male experience or any male issues and just came out of it with this just complaint that, yeah, women definitely have it worse. And none of them have actually done a real comparison. And it's so damning and it's so surreal that became like a widespread social phenomenon.
Well, okay, and here that's what I was what I started saying before about how they got used to the idea that they never had to actually be right. All they had to do was have numbers. And that was so pivotal, especially during the heyday of fourth wave feminism. I think fourth wave feminism really peaked in 2015. That was the year that they did Shout Your Abortion, and they were just so cocky. They just thought that, they could just forever lie about MRAs and that they could just crush the movement. They would go away entirely. And, Queen Hillary would be put into office and everybody would, I don't know, go off to the gulags if they opposed them, and they were totally fine with that. And they really thought that that was going to work, and it didn't work out that way. Now there's significant pushback. I can get into arguments on Facebook timelines of full-on leftists, someone who lives in San Francisco or Seattle, and yeah, they'll sort of try to outnumber me. And it's not just the women, it's men very commonly, and very often the male feminist types are the most aggressive. Like that's a very well-known thing. But more and more if I'm persistent, I keep at it and I try to remain cool and just remain logical, one or two other people are going to come and be like, wait, no, but he's right. And they have no concept of how to do anything besides gang up on someone to make their point. And it's like, and then when it gets to the point where, maybe the person that I know in common is like, hey, you guys, Prince is actually a good guy. Like you would probably like him if you met him in person and blah 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 blah. Could you really just be reasonable? And Prince, I'm asking you to be nice too, because you've said a few mean things. And so I try, and then they start to try for a second, and then they just can't do it. Like, because as soon as they start to actually try, they realize that they don't have a leg to stand on. And so then they just break down and go back to the mudslinging, like every time, like consistently. They cannot bring themselves to actually do it because they did not prepare themselves for the reality in which they would have to justify themselves.
Yeah, because feminism is a religion and feelings do not care about facts. Essentially.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that MGTOW, it really takes that step to kind of help make sense of everything. Because when you look at like male and female behavior in a lot of these terms, then everything kind of falls into place. Like once you have this idea of what gynocentrism is, then then from there it's like, oh, like that explains traditionalism, and it explains feminism, and it explains everything. It explains how we got where we are. But I think that a lot of people, when they encounter MGTOW, there's really a deeper natural push against it. But I think that might be just because MGTOW gets a lot of things right that we're not usually willing to say. Like a lot of people, I think, are on board with men's rights issues and like that aspect of it, because it kind of feeds into an egalitarian sort of narrative. But then from a strict egalitarian perspective, it's really hard to explain how we got where we are, but without some of these concepts that generally run around in MGTOW circles.
Yeah, and I think part of it too comes from that a lot of MGTOW are what's the word I'm looking for? We are quiet, buddy. Sorry, my son. We are biological determinists. Like we believe that biology plays a lot into our roles of how our psychology works and the means by which we choose to live and structure society. And since a lot of women have chosen, hey, we're not going to upkeep our end of the bargain, we're like, all right, fine, we don't have to either, and we're just going to do our own thing. We don't have to sacrifice for you anymore.
Yeah.
Then you have the Pikachu shocked face, like.
Yep. Feminists, we're gonna make this whole thing a really bad deal and just make it an absolute nightmare for you to do anything to interact with us. Okay, we'll do our own thing.
Yeah. And they're like, how dare you? Absolutely. Yeah.
And someone had mentioned women. Like Christina Hoff Summers was mentioned in the chat, and like I think that's kind of the perspective from which you look at that as like such bullshit, because it's just like you have feminists going this way for so long, and then as soon as they jump the shark and it gets too crazy, and then you start to see men have a reaction to it where they're like, okay, well, we're gonna withhold our end of the bargain too, then then they say, okay, well, can we just dial it down 1 degree and just have it at the absolute most extreme level of female entitlement that you could endure? And it seems like men are willing to take that deal. Like
we have other options. We don't have to.
Yeah, because I think that it'd be great to see things kind of move towards something more equitable. But there's something that Karen had said, which is that the need for a men's rights movement is always going to outweigh the demand for it, because like things are so bad right now, and basically men are always like men aren't even asking for something that's fair. They're just asking to be screwed less than they are now.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I'm used to 97% of the burden of things that you actually have to think about to maintain society outside of yourself. Like I'm used to that. But this whole 100% thing, like could we just go back down to 98%? Like,
yeah. And I'll readily admit that there are a number of MGTOW that are effectively what I would refer to as reluctant MGTOW. They are, if things were to improve to a point where a relationship could be at least partially or mostly beneficial, they would still go back to the plantation, so to speak. Me, I gave it a lot of thought, and I had to conclude that even if things became quote unquote perfectly balanced, whatever kind of utopia pipe dream that might actually be, which I'm not going to pretend that I'm smart enough to be able to figure out what that would be. I still wouldn't want to be back in a relationship. I've learned to enjoy my solitude and kind of doing my own thing too much.
Yeah, and that's, somebody in the chat, this guy kind of came and was sort of foaming at the mouth, like, oh, you just hate women, oh, you just hate women. And it's like, okay, so regardless of whether that has anything to do with our show, which, it's you can go ahead and look at our past guests. We've had a lot of women, but it's I think it's so unfair for people to act like, because a guy decided to like really make this pact with himself, at least for what everybody can always change, and even if he doesn't, it's like there's really something to be said for realizing that you're not in between girlfriends, that you are yourself, thinking about, what if I had to do that for the absolute rest of my life? Literally everybody would improve as a person. That's always a fair thing for anybody, male or female, to do. And then guys get crap for it, like it's just like, dude, chill out.
Yeah, don't need no man. That was a virtue, right? That was a virtue among women. And then for men, that's why I'm MGTOW defenders, because it seems just so shitty to me that people just view a person identifying as MGTOW and they have such a hostility towards it, when like literally what they're saying is, I'm just gonna do my own thing,
Yeah, just don't ask me for me to pay for your shit or to take responsibility for your life in any kind of way, and I don't care. You do what you want.
Yeah, it's so amazing that people do end up objecting to that. But I mean, we can be honest, there is a lot of full-on woman hate and associated with the MGTOW movement, that does come along with it. But at the same time,
mostly just for people that are in the red pill rage. There's also a lot of criticism of dysgenic behavior by women that I think is just seen as like hate towards all women, when we're mostly just mocking and making fun of such behavior.
Yeah, like, okay, so I guess red pill rage is not a term that I would have used, but that's absolutely what it is. Like Turd Flinging Monkeys show is, kind of like, as far as I know, the quintessential red pill rage show. Like it's like, for whatever reason, sometimes I'm in moods where I just want to listen to somebody who's just no holds barred talking about how horrible women are. And there's a little part of me that feels a little bit guilty usually. Like I'm like, but Amy's not like that. Faith is not like that. You know what I mean? But then at the same time, I'm like, no, I need to just hear someone do this right now. Like I'm in the mood for that. There's so much of that about men. I shouldn't have to feel guilty about this.
I've actually stopped listening to TFM about 6 months ago.
Yeah, it's for me, it's a pretty rare thing, like Spaceman apparently really gets into it. It's not really my bag overall, but like I accept that, there's no other thing that's consistent around that, has a big following that's like that,
Yeah, I'm not going to dog on his channel. I just found that I was reaching a point that I just wasn't getting anything particularly useful from him anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's probably totally aware of his niche in that way, like he's the red pill rage channel. Ta-da.
Yeah. There's been quite a few people that have donated and said basically, hey, I've kind of been listening to you for a while and I'm kind of done. And he's like, yeah, go on your own way, do your thing. That's kind of what I hope most people guys do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's kind of a recurring theme, is you'll have like people who make like YouTube content for a long time and then they disappear, and then people say like, how come they left? Have they betrayed? And it's like, well, like, no, like you got one life, like people do, all kinds of different things. And there's sort of this like weird, I guess, kind of like myopia of just like, I guess when people get comfortable with something like that, they just kind of think that that's how it should be forever. Or
No, there's some people like, say, take Spetsnaz, for example, which I highly recommend his channel too. He did a number of really fantastic videos. And from my perspective, it seemed like he was doing a lot of that as kind of a processing of his own journey. And then when he was done with it, he just stopped making videos, which is fine.
Yeah, and his channel is great. I've seen a few of his videos. I don't think I've seen all of them yet. I gotta remember that when I'm looking for things to watch. But
Jordan, you still with us? Okay, I don't know what happened to Jordan. Just was checking.
I wonder if he has an audio issue. Because Jordan, if you're trying to talk, then you might have to hop out and back in. If that's the case. But yeah, like one thing that it reminds me of there was this footage where it was Janice Flamenco giving a talk, and that there was some conversation in the Q&A about like parenting and like the stats for gay couples, and Janice suggested that there is some evidence to suggest that children do better when they have both a biological mother and father, and this woman in the audience got just completely irate and started just screaming at her that it's not true, and she had this really visceral, like, angry sort of reaction. And to me, when I heard that, I thought, like, hey, I'd like to hear that information. Like, that sounds like that's really helpful information for someone to know. And I feel like it's the same thing with like women and female behavior and a show like TFM's, where I feel like they should be exposed to that so that they can. I guess I'm really optimistic about people improving themselves, and then that, like, if you have these like kind of naywalty women, that maybe there's a chance that just by being exposed to here are the tactics, here are the things, maybe they can be red pilled and they can say, yeah, I don't want to be like that kind of a woman. I want to do something better. I think he would disagree. Right? He would say women don't need to change. It is their nature, and we just have to accept it. But I think that women have never had that kind of a message directed at them. And I think that I'm excited by the idea that, just a little bit of that kind of tough love could go a long way. And then we'd really see a great improvement. Because, how great would that be, right? If like, how easy, like how little is being asked of women. I guess I'm not a woman, so I don't know how hard it is for them.
Yeah, no, a little. The sort of, I think that instilling a cultural accountability for all of the things, because of feminism's heinous grip of culture that builded really ever since the 60s. But by the time we were born, it was there. It was in my elementary school, and that kind of a thing. There's these really, really horrible behaviors that have been encouraged in women, and a number of them are things that I think that when women really take themselves out of the propaganda and all of the just peer pressure of other women, they actually do feel really guilty about. And I'm positive of this when it comes to things like, well, mainly when it comes to their children, because one of the only things that I notice that women really, really do become emotionally invested in when you hold them accountable is their parenting. Like, if you are making it clear to them that they're not a good parent, they will flip out, and it makes them feel really, really bad. And people, it's this weird thing where it's off limits. Like, I remember this when I used to be involved in raves and I was on this raving message board. There was this crazy woman who would visit from out of town to the city that I lived in. Like, she lived in like Portland and I was in Seattle or something. And she would post these things like, oh my God, I was so high last night. And then like the next month, she's like, hey, just so you guys know, I know I'm always really high when I see you, but it's because I'm visiting from out of town. And so it's like, I'm really happy and blah, 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 blah. And she was talking about this stuff so much. And then at some point she revealed that she usually brought her like 7-year-old kid to the raves with her. And I was like, okay, what kind of mother are you? Like,
not.
It's like A, to be like that, but like B, to be posting about it online for everyone. Like, have some self-respect. And people got so mad at me. They're like, oh, that's not going to make the kid's life any better. If you come down on the mom, she's not going to make her a better. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think it can get much worse. And I really do think that this might be a situation where some public shaming might actually have a real effect. Like, let's just be honest here. But this idea of criticizing a woman in this way was so out of balance.
Heretical.
Yeah, heretical. And but you know, like I think it really, you know, for example, the whole thing where, you know, like, yeah, actually it's really good for the child to have their biological father present. I think that women kind of know that deep down. I think that they do. You know, I think that they've all witnessed times when, you know, even if they're a single mother, they've seen the kid have a good time with the baby daddy and they think for a moment, you know, they're like, huh. And, you know, the same thing goes for abortion. I think that the reason that the pro-abortion women are so viscerally attached to like abortion access, it's not even so much about other women and why they really need for it to be legal. I think it's usually that they've had an abortion and they're fighting to the bitter end to overcompensate for the guilt that they feel.
Well, it comes down to that we've already decided that women have the full right to do whatever basically they want, and we're essentially just boiling things down to what degree should a woman's life be bothered before we have to infringe upon the rights of everyone else around them.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of it is just this kind of like I call it moral outsourcing, but it'd be a form of it where they're just looking for social approval as kind of the stand-in for having like a more robust sense of what's right or wrong. So I think that there is something to this idea that for some women the only way to get through to them would be to shame them and to suggest that they'll be viewed in a negative social light, and that's going to be a greater motivation to improve their behavior than pointing out like, here's how you're harming people.
Absolutely.
Well, there we go. We solved the problem. That's it. We just have to shame women.
Sorry, I was typing real quick, but
Shame
no,
women and start holding them accountable for their agency.
yeah, because I don't think it's impossible. You know, like the times in my life when I know I've struck a nerve with a woman in the right way, you know, where it's like I got her to really think about something that she knows she's done wrong. It's been so powerful, and usually their reaction is just to become vehemently angry, try to shut it all out, try to you know, demonize me, blow up, cause a scene, that type of thing. But I think that, you know, if just people as a whole realize that, like, well, wait, we kind of need to do that because we do that to men, and in a lot of ways it actually does work. You know, rapes are at an all-time low, and I don't want to say feminism's good or anything, but like there is that side effect. And if people started realizing that, you know, toxic femininity is not just a thing, but it's a rampant thing, it's both encouraged and enabled in our culture, people could sort of start to make this shift, and it would make women better people and ultimately happier people, because they know, like, it, you cannot wash away your own guilt entirely if you're just pretending it doesn't exist. You can't brush it under the rug your whole life. You know, if you had uh an abortion, you know, 5 months into the pregnancy, you know, and I know a girl that did that, and she said she would never have an abortion again, and it was so horrible. She could feel the life ripped from out within her, and she actually was honest about this because nobody in her life had ever actually been honest. They all just acted like abortion was, it didn't matter, and she was like, no, it did matter to me. And she posted about it publicly on social media, and I know that kind of thing affected her. And, you know, she was one of the few people that was at least, you know, had enough dignity and self-respect to try to actually really come clean and share a story to help other women realize this, because it's not really even so much about, you know, it's not about what Christians think of you. Like, I don't have an opinion about the abortion debate, and it's just, it's a very complicated reason why I choose not to have an opinion, but I will definitely say that people should try not to have abortions. I do not think that they are good to have. Whether they are legal or not is a completely separate issue, but each and every woman, it's like, just because it's legal does not mean that it's good. You know, this is a living thing within you. It stops being just some cells after a certain time, and you need to admit that. And if you won't admit that, you're going to be the one that's suffering the consequences, because you're going to be the one that feels a guilt that nobody else will ever feel.
I'm just glad that I don't have to worry about impregnating a doll, at least not yet.
Oh, this guy, Pinoid News, is in the chat being recommended to me, and I didn't realize that he's here. And so, hi, hello. I will check out your channel or whatever, and maybe we could talk sometime in the future. Just hello. So, what else we got to talk about? Oh yeah, Spacepan, we had some topics of discussion that we wanted to bring up to speak about, and so we're going to sort of slightly veer because we want to talk about a little bit of news stuff. Do you have a story regarding that shooting from the gay and the trans person?
You know, I don't have specific articles ready, but what I can do is just search for it and see what comes up.
Okay, could you screen share for us?
Colorado. Yes, I can.
Because we got about a half hour left, and you know, I sort of feel like we're starting to repeat ourselves a teeny bit in the, you know, women.
Usually we end up going into kind of news stuff a little bit earlier. I think we had so many different topics we got sidetracked, which I think is a good sign. I think we talked about a lot of different stuff. No,
but I do really want to talk about, in particular, that shooting that happened. Did you hear about this? You probably did.
Are you sure you don't want to talk about the lighter topics, which was making fun of Harry Styles' stupid outfit? Or I guess maybe that's like too gay.
I don't know if I was ever really all that interested in that one at all.
I thought it was funny. Okay, so Colorado shooting. So yeah, this one was interesting because.
Are you screen sharing?
So many reasons. Sorry, I'm just gonna grab an article first. Should we go with Washington Post? I guess. I wish that media wasn't all just trash. That's why I only get my news from YouTube. That's the only way to do it. It's all fake. It's all fake and gay.
So, Mephitus, God, I look at your name and I'm like, I know I'm saying it wrong. I that's why I keep asking. But have you heard of? Sorry.
If it helps, it comes from Mephitidae, the same for the family of skunk.
Okay, Mephitus.
Yeah, Mephitus, like Mephitidae.
Mephitus. Okay.
Yeah.
So is the skunk like the ultimate MGTOW? Because like they experience to keep people away. I think that kind of fits though, doesn't it?
No, in fact, in the wild, skunks are polyamorous. They tend to have multiple women that bed with them on over the winter. But it's actually just because I'm a furry too, coincidentally.
Huh. So
I am a furry defender. I also defend the furries. I think they're misunderstood.
And also the
cancerous people.
And also the bronies.
Yeah, I will white knight for the bronies too. Bronies didn't do nothing.
I won't.
And you know what? It's a decent show. My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic is a decent show.
I agree. It is a good show. Oh yeah, you have a kid. It's pretty good, right?
Well, no, I started watching it before he was born. He's only 5.
Oh, okay. Well,
you know, Tumbles the Stair Dragon is like the penultimate of stories that you got to tell.
But okay, so have you heard about this shooting that happened? It was a situation where 2 far leftists who apparently think that Obama was the best president ever. I don't know exactly what their opinion about Obama was, but apparently they're really into Obama. They really, really hate Trump. They decided that they were going to shoot up their school. And I think they killed 2 people, but which was like, oh, that's not all that sad. Only 2 people died, because these shootings happen all the time. It's obviously a very, very huge tragedy. But what's really interesting in particular about this is that one of them was gay and one of them was trans, and like female to male. And I don't think that anybody has ever heard of that happening. And one of the things
probably fits a lot of the standard what's the word I'm looking for? Demographic. Probably fits a lot of the standard demographic that we see from a lot of other school shootings. Something like 27 of the last 29 school shootings, at least apart from this one, have all been either single mother or no fatherly involvement homes.
yeah, that's I think a very common thread. But I think that, you know, they've always wanted to paint it out to be straight white men, toxic masculinity, you know, even when there's other incidents and it doesn't fit that uh typography, is that the word I'm looking for, that script, you know, that exact demographic of people, they will largely ignore the news. But this time it is a gay guy and a female to male far leftists, and they I've noticed that there hasn't been, like, people have said that, oh, they're just going to ignore this, people are going to pretend it didn't happen. But I've noticed that with trans people in particular on my Facebook, they're actually talking about this. And of course what they're saying is, oh no, I hope that people don't use this as an excuse for transphobia and things like that. But I think it's really interesting because it's like, wait, is this going to be the first time that it really gets through people's heads that, you know, yes, leftists are violent, and yes, they're capable of everything that right-wing people are. Like there's this always been this idea that leftist violence doesn't matter because they don't actually kill people, even though that's not true. You know, like, even though they've certainly tried and they've certainly succeeded in certain instances. But, you know, when there's somebody who's either not a leftist or definitely is, you know, relatively right wing, those people usually just happen to be a little bit better with weapons. And so they end up killing a lot of people. But, you know, there's people who try, you know, and sometimes they succeed. And I think I think that it's such a pain to have to feel this way. But my honest opinion is that there's a tiny, you know, part of my political agenda type talking point that is at least kind of glad that this exists in order to bring balance to the debate, you know, because they always get to pretend like nothing the left does matters. And it's like, okay, finally we can at least say that's really not true in a way that will get through to them.
It also helps that they use that as a victim narrative or like an underdog narrative, so they can continue to say, no, we're the underdogs. We don't actually have any real power. That's why you need to give it to us or keep giving it to us.
Yeah.
I think if you look at all of these kinds of events, what typically happens is people treat it like you're kind of drawing things out of this random hat, and then depending on whatever motivations or identities that the suspects have, they use that to promote their narrative, right? But then, you know, whenever it kind of falls in a way that's like politically inconvenient, people who like would be in like the crosshairs of that criticism, or that was a bad choice of words, but people who would be in the, they say, like, you know, they make this bigger point all of a sudden, like, okay, well, we can't generalize now. And now we're seeing that with people on the left. And it's kind of like they've been playing this game of drawing out of the hat, right? And then since they had like a winning streak from their perspective for so long, you know, now as soon as the chips fall out of their favor, they say, okay, now it's time for us to have principles and to not talk about the names of the suspect and to you know, make it about
Yeah.
blah blah. But yeah, I remember one interesting thing that had happened with this one is I think it was the school had a sort of vigil to honor some of the people who had resisted. And they tried to make it this big political statement about gun control. And a lot of the students just like walked out.
And good for them.
Yeah, good for them. Absolutely.
Yeah, good for them.
I'm waiting to see a lot of activists complain about Maya McKinney getting dead named by the media. Like, I really want to see that angle of outrage.
Oh, by the way, Spacepan, can I send you a meme so that you can screen share it?
Yes.
Because you're the one who's doing the screen sharing at the moment. Okay, I'll send it to you on Facebook.
Okay. If you send it to my Facebook, send it to my real Facebook, because that's what I'm on my desktop. See, I have multiple Facebooks because I'm always banned.
Sorry,
yeah. I have only one Facebook. The other one is my Chinese girlfriend, who's definitely real and works as a Chinese spy at the government.
They'll probably laugh at me. All I have is Twitter. I deleted my Facebook almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, I should delete mine too, because Facebook is so gay.
I would, but the thing about it is that it's my super useful window into the leftist culture, because I have, you know, a very sizable amount of quote unquote friends, and I get to sort of spy on them. And
Well, you don't use Tumblr for that?
Prince, if you send me a
Or is
message
that
through
just too cancerous?
Facebook, it's gonna have your Facebook name on the screen share. So you should send it to me through Twitter.
no, I want you to take it in your Facebook. Okay, I'll put it in Twitter. Fine. I wasn't asking you to screen share the message. I was asking you to take the meme, download it, but I'll send it to you in Twitter. I don't care.
Well, because I'm a boomer, I'd have to undo the screen share and then redo it, and that's hard.
So,
There's too many steps.
but no, I mean, the thing is, like, Facebook is the left's natural habitat. The left entire, like, somebody made a really great, it was one of those sandwich board signs out in front of a bar or whatever, and it said, imagine if tomorrow you woke up and all of Facebook was entirely deleted. Guess what? You're no longer an activist.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Because like their entire social life and everything revolves around Facebook. All their friends is there, and then the only reason that they're able to like organize and promote events is by sending things out to their friends and those friends, and they talk about things, you know, as friends. But I've never really been on Tumblr. You know, I don't really know what that's like. But you certainly don't get the same crap on Twitter. You know, you can't just get that from tweets. Twitter is sort of the town hall, but Facebook is more like going into their houses and seeing what they're really saying. And so it's an invaluable tool. And so for me, I'm going to stay on it for quite a while. There is going to be that point though, where I'm like, look, I got to get past this point in my life where I am, you know, determined to help stop this insanity coming from the left, you know. But I do think that there will be a point where I'm like, okay, you know what? It's either over or it's over enough that it's going to take care of itself and I don't have to do anything anymore. I need to focus on positivity. I need to focus on people that I really like as my friends. Then I will delete Facebook.
I'm
You're
just
much
gonna
more
go
of
to
an optimist than I
Facebook I'm gonna go to Facebook every 30 days to just say the N-word and just like see how many times I can get banned in 1 year.
am. Yeah, I'll put it this way. You want my political affiliation? I am a collapsitarian.
You're one of those. I'm gray pilled. I kind of got a foot in each door, or in each room, I should say. I'm not really sure, because obviously we prefer to sort of do this thing where we crash land the plane somewhat, softly as much as it can be, and then we transition into minarchy, and then slowly just like get rid of all this like government bullshit. But it's seeming like the collapsitarians, for as the cartoonish as the position seems like on paper, it is kind of shaping out to be more and more the realistic stance, and it seems that that's where the trajectory is.
Oh, hey, real quick, Voltron Defender of the Universe just posted in the chat a little bit ago. I need a prayer if anyone's down with that. My daughter's dog got attacked today and the doctor had to take his eye out. She has no way to foot the bill, so I'm using credit cards. That's really, really rough. As somebody who's currently struggling financially, I totally feel for you. I will give... Okay, I did it. I gave a little prayer.
Hey Voltron, if you put up a crowdfunder and DM it to me, I'll share it out.
Yeah, that's sad to hear. Dogs, people don't deserve dogs. Like dogs are so good, and so it's always sad when something bad happens to them. So I hope Dogger's okay and everything.
I don't like to think his daughter didn't deserve the dog though. I don't think that's what you're saying.
No. I'm not sure who would attacked it. It must have been like another dog or. Well.
So let's look at this article for a little bit because I am going to have to end very soon after 7 p.m. PST because I got to go run some errands. But I do want to take a look at this. So I'm going to present to everybody Space Pan. So,
yeah, you can see it.
I have to. Oh, Yeah, that's the meme, actually. Okay, so here's the deal. This is actually a real person. He is a friend of mine. I saw this person's post. My friend wrote me and is like, oh my God. So this person, and this is actually a dude, believe it or not. This is not a lesbian. This is not a like non-binary, I chopped off my tits. This is actually a dude. Apparently this person went to Stanford. I had actually met this person, and they were very, very, like, all their friends were white. They talk like a white person. And then they decided that they were going to be an SJW, and they were way overcompensating and trying way too hard to be woke. You know, like this was in, I guess, 2015, because this was when Orlando happened. And seriously, there's words that come out that there's the shooting in Orlando, and this person posted, like, I guess it must have been the second that they heard about it, and I guess they heard that it was a club commonly frequented by people of color, and they also heard that something about trans people. And so they were like, oh my God, time to virtue signal. And so they posted something about it, you know, like, there's been a shooting in Orlando at a club frequented by people of color, and they put hashtag Black Lives Matter, hashtag Women's Lives Matter, hashtag Trans Lives Matter. And of course, it was actually a radical ISIS person, and killed almost exclusively Latino men. Apparently, the whole trans thing was simply that there was one trans performer that night, but it was a Latino night, and it was not a trans night. And it was not even like particularly, like, the club apparently isn't like a person of color club. It just happened to be a, you know, Latino night. It's Florida. That's one of the things that they do. So I was thinking about, you know, how I felt bad to be kind of politicizing. You know, I had to give this like spiel about this sort of politicization of this most recent shooting. But then I remembered this guy. You know, he didn't even wait to hear a single detail. He was so eager to politicize it, and he got everything wrong. So the meme says Islamic person of color massacres 50 queer people, mostly Latino men, blames the white patriarchy for discrimination against Black people and women. And that is the truth. That is what it looks like when you're somebody who would say that type of thing.
He looks like Janelle Monáe.
He wishes.
He's stealing her look.
Yeah, he's really trying.
Like Janelle Monáe on Halloween.
So
Yeah, I got nothing.
So okay, let's look at this article real quick.
Okay, so I have this was one about it's just an ad. Yeah, Wikipedia, and then so this is actually a more recent news story with a wait a minute, how did I get to CB? I did not open this. Sorry. So this one is an update that was recent. It says the latest on the shooting at a Colorado school that killed one student and injured 8. A law enforcement official says a security guard fired his gun during this week's shooting at a charter school in a Denver suburb. That's an interesting note, by the way, is that now we have this weird cluster of shootings that have all happened in Colorado, right? Because you have like Columbine, Aurora, this one, and there was a fourth one too.
What's the single mother rate?
Yeah, right. Well, and that does seem to be the most common denominator of all of it. That and like psychotropic meds. Like I think those two are like the
utilization of SSRIs and single mothers. Single mothers are cancer.
Yeah, SSRIs really do turn people into psychos. Like, and it really makes sense. Like, apparently being on SSRIs is, I've never been on one, you know, like I saw firsthand what they did to people. Like, people close to me went on them for periods of time, and it was like, oh, it's apparently
I had to be on several while I was married.
So apparently it's kind of like half like being on ecstasy, in the way that like you just have this like kind of constant feeling that everything is good and everything is okay, but it eventually robs you of, like, has anyone ever done an MDMA? I used to do those things. I do not recommend it. It's actually very, very bad for you in a way that you will notice the next day. So don't think that it's something that I advise doing. But
it's very much that it robs you of your very highs and very lows. So it stops you from being just bad and negative all the time, which, if you are clinically depressed, is a necessity of reaching a point where you're just not hurting anymore. You're just not in pain anymore. But it also robs you in a lot of ways of like the feelings of euphoria and that you would otherwise feel from like accomplishing something that is particularly difficult, as an example. And luckily I was able to get off all of them after I separated, but you know.
Well, that's really great, because what I was going to say is that a lot of people don't. It's actually one of the most, if you become really, really addicted to SSRIs, and this is, over the course of years that this will happen, people become, you get a tolerance and you have to up your dose. And if you've been on them for that long, I'm sure there are people who have kind of recovered, but it's one of these things where your body loses its ability to produce serotonin entirely. So if you get off, you will be clinically depressed no matter what you do. And
yeah, I was in withdrawal for about 3 months afterwards.
Okay, because apparently if you like up your dose, if you're on them, if you're on Prozac for about 2 years, you're gonna have to up your dose and to the maximum. And then once you're on the maximum, if you stay on it for another couple of years, apparently you get off, and people are never the same for years after that. And
yeah, as one thing that I highly recommend, especially for men that are on the borderline, if they think that they need. Yeah, I'm almost done, buddy. Sorry. It's one thing that I highly recommend for men that think that they might be borderline of needing an SSRI. Get your endocrine system checked. Get your testosterone levels checked. Because if you are low, getting it boosted back up can make a night and day difference.
That is actually true. It happened to me. I thought that I didn't know what was wrong with me. It turned out that due to complicated reasons, I had low testosterone. I went off of sugar, stopped drinking alcohol, got more exercise. In about a year, it went back up to normal, and things were so much better. But I had this friend, and she tried to explain the feeling of being on Zoloft for a while. And she was like, yeah, got to the point where I was talking to someone and they were being mean to me and really criticizing me. And I was just thinking in my head, oh, they're being mean to me. Apparently they hate me and I don't care. And then she was like, okay, logically, I shouldn't be like that. I don't think that that's a good thing for me. She was one of the few women I've known that was relentlessly logical. She became a software engineer and gets paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars in adult life. And she is actually very, very smart. And so there are these women out there, and she was one of them, and that was her experience with them. So yeah, people, when people get to this point where they don't feel things, but it tends to make people kind of a little bit hyperactive and stuff. Well, what's stopping them from doing something really, really crazy if they're not properly registering emotions anymore?
Yeah, very much so. And especially since a lot of the SSRIs, they're finding that for some reason, even though you are no longer on a level of like clinical depression, you're no longer feeling that bad. A lot of people that are on them also start experiencing like suicidal ideation for some reason, and they're still trying to figure out what exactly is causing it.
Mm-hmm. So let's read through this article. Derek, could you do that?
Sure. Yep. So this is the update regarding the security guard that intervened during the shooting. So let's see. The official spoke on condition of anonymity Thursday because the official was not authorized to release the information, and the official did not say whether the guard shot anybody at the STEM school, Highlands Ranch, on Tuesday. Robert Burke, an attorney for the guard, declined to confirm reports by news organizations that authorities are investigating whether the guard fired at a sheriff's deputy and wounded a student. Burke says the guard, whom he did not name, took decisive action that helped save lives. Boss-level high protection owner Grant Whitus has said his employee confronted and apprehended one of the two suspects in the shooting that killed one student and wounded 8 others. And then we have an update from a little bit later. It says the Brady Gun Control Group that organized a vigil for victims and survivors of the Colorado school shooting that killed a student and injured 8 has issued a statement detailing its apology for the event that was criticized as politicizing the tragedy. The statement says the group is deeply sorry any part of this vigil did not provide the support, caring, and sense of community we sought to foster and facilitate. It adds that the group knows this is so crucial to communities who suffer the trauma of gun violence. Wednesday night's vigil in a packed high school gym included speeches by presidential hopeful Senator Michael Bennet and U.S. Representative Jason Crow, both Democrats. I haven't heard of either of them. I know there's a lot of people running, so I guess that.
Do you know what would be really kind of funny in the dark humor type way? If some, like intersectional feminist who claims to be a Muslim lesbian showed up being like, stop blaming all Islamic people for the actions of a few. And they're like, no, they're actually a trans person and a gay guy. Oh,
sorry. Oh, shit. The one time it wasn't. Some students walked out in protest. Students were eventually allowed to speak. The suspects in Tuesday's shooting have been identified by authorities as 18-year-old Devin Erickson and 16-year-old, who prosecutors identified as Maya McKinney, but whose attorney said uses male pronouns and the name Alec. Oh, there we go. Dead naming her. That's the real tragedy.
Yeah.
The death of a person, but the death of a name is the real.
And isn't this such a weird little opportunity for intersectionals to get in some like transgender argument? Like, no, you should call her by her male name because he was the person who did this shooting. It was when he became a he that he had toxic masculinity and he decided to do this. And this is really just further indication that both trans men and that gay men are victims of toxic masculinity. They embody these traits, and nobody should be naive about that. Therefore, everybody should self-identify as non-binary femmes.
Yeah, really, you could write a pair of articles, like one that explains how this was the result of toxic masculinity because you had this gay male shooter and this female to male transgender, right? So obviously they're just over the brim with toxic masculinity. But then you could flip both of them into a lesbian and a male to female trans, and then you could explain how it was also toxic masculinity.
Yeah, that's a good point.
To quote Titania McGrath, how much longer do we have to suffer from these men before we start outlawing being male?
No, I was just going to mention her because I'm imagining this as like Titania McGrath. I'm sure she's had some great tweets on it.
Until we have to start. I didn't hear the second sentence of that.
Oh, until we make it illegal to be male.
Oh, outlawing. Okay, yeah.
We have to outlaw maleness.
And then the older, wiser feminist says, well, the problem is we've been trying that for a long time, but we have to get men to do that. So it's been really difficult.
Men did this. Men, help.
Yeah. It's like, well, we have found that we don't really have to do that because we can just call them all rapists if they cross us. But yeah, they do end up sort of making most of the decisions. But don't worry, they always make decisions that'll benefit us more than them anyway. And if they do something we don't like, we'll ruin them.
Well, when I was reading Women Respond to the Men's Movement last week, I guess earlier this week for you guys in Merca, the Starhawk part of it, she talks about like ending war, and she's like, well, since war is carried out by men, why can't the men just stop it? And I'm just like, wow, like congratulations, that's a world peace recipe right there. Why don't just stop? Just don't do it. Just stop.
It's such a funny argument because it's so easy to say, like to defeat when feminists say, well, why is there war all the time? It's because of men. Men start wars. And I say, yeah, why do men start wars? To provide resources to their societies, which they will gladly give over to women because women control about 80% of consumer decisions. They fight wars because women want the stuff that they get from them.
Yeah, well, and that's why I think that Mephitus, that idea you have for making a video following like David's bridal closing and like the trends in marketing, I think there's actually quite a lot of different topics there, just starting with female spending habits and how many different things we can learn from it. Because I think that it's really easy to forget how much it's females that drive this culture of consumerism.
Yeah, it's true. For every dollar that a woman spends, she only has to earn like 77 cents. So...
Yeah, yeah, it's really absurd. Yeah, I hate shopping, but man, you take a woman shopping and it is their natural habitat. Um, Speaking of shopping, I actually do got to go and get something really bad. And I've been hearing your kid wanting to spend time with you, which I think is really sweet. So
Yeah, and I need to make him dinner too.
yeah, I think that we should be drawing this to a close. But thanks for coming on, and I'm so glad to see so many new faces in the chat. Really appreciate that. Please do keep in mind that I'm doing due to particular financial circumstances in my life. I have no access to my savings until late July, the end of July. I am really asking for stuff from my audience, and it'd be really great if you could donate something to me on PayPal. And I have a PayPal link on my homepage. Check out my videos if you're new to this channel, because I really, really have a lot of videos. I have a lot of men's rights videos. I have a lot of things criticizing feminism. I have an entire playlist devoted to stuff related to gay men. So if you want to hear what a gay MRA has to say about what we think of, feminists taking over our community, because they do, check out my videos and think about what you could do. Can't do this without my audience. Thank you very much. And other parting words, guys?
Very well, and go your own way.
Yeah, well, this was a fun chat. So my name's Derek. My channel is Spacepan, and I make kind of similar content, but in a different flavor, because I add the ANCAP spin. But as someone described me just last night, like internet edge personified. You combine all those things. But anyway, lately I've been doing streams of just reading this book, Women Respond to the Men's Movement. And for that one, I invite other people to hop on there if they want to. Where basically I'm going to read this awful book at you, where feminists expose how little they care about men's issues. And it's from 1992, so it's a bit of a tome. So that's kind of the project I've been working on now. So just thought I'd shill that.
Yeah, Spacepan's a little bit similar to me. If you were to imagine a more radical version of me, it would probably be Spacepan. Like we're almost the good cop, bad cop thing going on. Though maybe Jordan would be good cop who went silent. Okay, guys, I'm gonna end this. Thanks everyone for coming. Bye.
Bye.